All right, so continuing along in section 1.5, we're on page 24 right now. We're going to look at equations that have absolute value bars in them, and we'll call them absolute value equations. For our first example, I want to solve the equation, the absolute value of x equals 10, which is like me asking you what number or numbers can you take the absolute value of and get 10. You know what, let me actually write that question down. What number or numbers can you take the absolute value of and get 10? What do you think? What number or numbers can you take the absolute value of and get 10? I think there are two different answers. I think if x is 10, the absolute value of 10 is 10. Absolute value of a positive number is a positive number. But I also think x could be negative 10 because the absolute value of negative 10 will give you positive 10. There are two different answers to these, and usually absolute value equations will have two different answers. In the next one, I want to solve the absolute value equation, the absolute value of x minus 6 equals 10. Well, I know that the entire thing inside the bars must either equal 10 or negative 10. This must equal 10 or negative 10, because if the thing inside the bars was 10, the absolute value of 10 is 10. Perfect. If the thing inside the bars was negative 10, absolute value of negative 10 is also 10. Because of this, I'm going to go write out two really simple little equations without absolute value bars. Either the stuff that was inside the bars equals 10, or the stuff that was inside the bars equals negative 10. Take a moment, go solve these equations. Yes, please show all the algebra, and tell me what the two answers are. I'm going to add 6, add 6. I'm going to get x equals 16. Over here, add 6, add 6. I'm going to get x equals negative 4. There are two answers to this equation, either x equals 16 or x equals negative 4. You don't believe me? Plug in 16. 16 minus 6 is 10. Absolute value of 10 is 10. Plug in negative 4. Negative 4 minus 6 is negative 10. Absolute value of negative 10 is 10. Those are the two answers. Absolute value of x plus 4 equals negative 3. You know what? Rather than that problem, let's look at this problem. Let's look at a simpler one. Absolute value of x equals negative 5. What number or numbers can you take the absolute value of and get negative 5 as your answer? Well, if you said 5, absolute value of 5 is positive 5, it's not going to work. If you said negative 5, absolute value of negative 5, absolute value makes it positive, so that's going to give me 5. I don't think there is anything. There are no numbers that you can take the absolute value of and end up with a negative number answer. Something like this has no solution. For the same reason, an equation like this, absolute value of x plus 4 equals negative 3, what can you take the absolute value of and get negative 3? Nothing. There is no solution. To be able to solve an absolute value equation, you have to have an equation in the form, the absolute value bars of something equals some positive number. To solve an absolute value equation in general, I think you can see on the bottom of the page we have some slightly more complicated equations. Here's what we need to do in general. Step number 1, we need to go through some algebra to get the absolute value bars by themselves. Get the absolute value bars by themselves. You're not allowed to distribute into the bars, combine like terms between something in the bars and something not in the bars, but we'll go through some algebra to get the bars by themselves. Basically, I want to be left with an equation, absolute value of something equals some number. If we're left with the absolute value of something equals some negative number, then there is no solution. if we have the absolute value of something equals a negative number, there is no solution. Otherwise, actually, why don't I write it as if we have the absolute value of something equals a positive number. We're going to create two equations. And solve. And those two equations are going to say the stuff in the bars either equals my number or the stuff in the bars equals the negative version of my number. Take a moment, copy down those rules, and then we're going to take a look at two examples. Letter A. I want to solve the absolute value equation, absolute value of 2x minus 3 minus 1 equals 11. I first need to get the bars by themselves, and I am not allowed to combine the negative 3 and the negative 1. So I'm going to go and I'm going to add 1 to both sides. I'm going to get the absolute value of 2x minus 3 equals 12. At this point, because I have the absolute value of something equals a positive number, I'm going to go and create two equations without bars. I'm going to say that thing inside the bars either equals 12, because I know the absolute value of 12 is 12, or the thing inside the bars equals negative 12, because I know the absolute value of negative 12 is 12. Take a moment and solve both of those equations. Give me the answers as fractions. Tell me what you get. That first one is giving me 15 halves. The second one is giving me, divide, negative 9 halves. Either x equals 15 halves, oops, sorry, can't see that. X equals 15 halves, or x equals negative 9 halves. In letter B, I got to get the bars by themselves. What sort of algebra are you going to do first? What's the first step going to be? I need to get the bars by themselves. I got to get rid of the 2. Subtract 2, subtract 2. That's going to give me 3 times the absolute value of x minus 8 equals 1. You're not allowed to distribute the 3. So what else can you do? We're going to divide both sides by 3 to get rid of that. And we're going to get the equation absolute value of x minus 8 equals 1/3. Well, I know it's not super pleasant, but whatever, we can deal with fractions. This is Algebra 2. You know how to work with fractions. I'm going to make my two equations, x minus 8 equals 1/3, or x minus 8 equals negative 1/3. I'd like you to solve those equations, and your work is going to involve getting a common denominator. See what you can do and submit your answers as fractions to Edpuzzle. I'm going to add 8. But 8 over 1 is really like 24 over 3. So I'm going to get 25/3 as one answer. I'm going to add 8 over here. 8 over 1 is again 24/3. Negative 1/3 plus 24/3 should give me 23/3. Your two answers, 25/3 and 23/3. We're almost always going to get two solutions. Sometimes, though, there will be no solution if we end up with an equation where we have the absolute value of something equaling a negative number.